Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I want to continue our series focusing on how to use Blender for video editing. In particular, I want to talk about keyframes in today's tutorial. So this is going to be an introductory tutorial on keyframes where we'll just define what they are and show how to use them, and we'll save the more complicated keyframing for a later discussion. So I like to think about keyframes in the context of mathematical functions. For all you engineers and mathematicians, you probably know that a function has an independent parameter slash variable x, and for each value of x, there's a corresponding dependent parameter or variable y. So in many cases, we don't have a continuous mapping between x and y values. We only have data at discrete points. So a common engineering task is to then try to interpolate between these points. We can do this using a linear fit or perhaps something more sophisticated like a spline fit, and this is exactly what keyframes in Blender is all about. In video editing, the independent parameter is actually going to be the frame number, and the dependent parameter is going to be something that we're going to prescribe like an image parameter such as the position of a picture, the color of some text, or it could be something else completely. Now, these discrete points are what we specify, and these are what are called keyframes, and we're going to let Blender do the continuous interpolation between the keyframes. So, with this theoretical background out of the way, let's jump over to Blender and get started. Alright, so here's a project that I've started that has a single video clip, and this video clip just shows some students hand launching an unmanned aircraft. So, as you can see, the aircraft gets a little hard to see as it flies away from the camera. So to help viewers track the aircraft, it might be nice to add a green circle that highlights the position of the vehicle. Now, that's exactly what I've already done. I've already gone ahead and prepared myself a transparent green circle in this circletransparent.png file, so we just need to insert that into Blender. If you need a little refresher on how to insert images, text, or sound into a Blender project, feel free to check out our previous video. You can get to it by clicking on the card in the upper right corner. So, I'm just going to come here and say Add Image, and I'm going to pick that circle. I'm going to add that to the image strip, and let's go ahead and place it where we would like the circle to start showing up. So maybe... Actually, this looks pretty good. Like, how about right around here where the aircraft starts going away? Now, let me stretch out this. I'm going to click G, or press G while I'm holding on the right side of the arrow and drag it over so the circle stays visible a little bit longer. I need to scale this. You see that it's not the right scale, so I'm going to go ahead and add a transform on just the circle. I'm going to come here to the strip tab of the circle, and I'm going to just do a uniform scale. I don't really care about the aspect ratio of this circle. I just care about it looking circle-ish. So I can now go ahead and mess with parameters like the position X, the position Y, things like that. Right? So if I go ahead and do this, you see at this frame, at frame number 289, this green circle will show up to kind of highlight where the aircraft is located. Now, the problem with this is that the aircraft is going to move, and right now the way I've got this set up is, you know, the circle shows up and it's in the correct position, but as the aircraft starts moving away, you see now it's not in the right position, right? We want the circle to kind of move with the vehicle. So you might be tempted to come here and try to move the position, right? You can say, okay, well, great, I'm going to move the position, and now it's covering the vehicle. But the problem is you've moved the circle for the entire duration of its existence, and you've moved it to this constant static location. So basically, the circle is not moving within the frame. You can see, right? So this is the problem, and this is exactly what keyframes are going to help us fix. So the way that keyframes work is, let's go ahead and start right here at the beginning of when the circle appears. So what we want to do is we want to move the circle to the desired location. We want to get the parameters, namely, I'm going to mess with mostly the position X and the position Y. I want those to be set up at the location where I'd like it at this particular frame, at frame 289, okay? Once that's set, what we need to do is we need to tell Blender, okay, at frame 289, I want the position X to be minus 3.21 and the position Y to be 24.77999, okay? And I want you to hold that right now. So the way you do that, the way you set a keyframe is I'm just gonna hover over the variable or the image parameter that I want to set as a keyframe. So I'm hovering over the position X, I'm not clicking anything, and all I'm gonna do now, once I'm hovering over it, I'm gonna go to my keyboard and I'm gonna press the I key. I for India. So I press I, and you see how it turns yellow, and you get this little icon showing up to it, next to it? That tells us that this parameter is now marked as a keyframe. So at frame number 289, it knows to make sure that this value is the value of negative 3.21. I'm going to do the same thing for the Y parameter, the position Y of the circle. So I'm going to hover over this with my mouse. I'm not going to click anything, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to press I. And there, that basically sets another keyframe at this frame number 289, and it sets the Y value. So again, this is the X value of the keyframe, and here are the two Y values of parameters that I want to set. So now, if I advance the image a little bit longer, you see the aircraft is starting to drift out of the way. So like maybe right here. So what I need to do is I need to reposition the green circle. So you see that these two image values are being interpolated via keyframes. They're now green, showing you that it's sort of in the interpolation mode right now. I need to move this so that it's positioned over the aircraft. So I'm gonna again futz with this. So you notice the colors change here, okay? And we're going to talk about the colors in a second, but I'm gonna circle it. I'm gonna make sure it's positioned where I wanted it to be. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna hover over the parameter I want to set. I'm gonna then press the I key, hover down here, press the I key on my keyboard, and I set two more keyframes. So now, if we go back to frame 289. Right here, notice at frame number 289, these two image parameters are yellow, meaning this is the keyframe value. But now, if I just advance one frame, let's go, how about to frame 290, enter. Look at that. Now these values are green, right? And what we're going to see is if you move this along, see the circle is starting to move. We are interpolating between the two keyframes. And you can kind of see that somewhere in between here it flashes yellow. Right there. Right there. Here's our next keyframe. At frame number 327, we have another keyframe on these two parameters. So we've basically set two data points, and Blender is now interpolating between those 2 points right now. So we can just simply repeat this process. So I'm going to advance the frame a little longer. Okay, the aircraft has moved, so I'm going to now move the position of the circle. I'm going to make sure it's highlighted over it. Okay, that looks good. Then I'm going to hover over the two parameters, press I and I, and then I'm going to go a little bit further. You can see the air, it's kind of wiggling all over the place. So this is a little bit interesting. So depending on how temporally fine of a resolution you'd like, you can kind of do this keyframing all day. So here it is, it's moving again. So I'm going to move these a little bit more. I'm going to hit I and I, okay? And let's go a little more. Okay, now the plane's kind of down here and over, maybe a little bit like this. And then I'm going to press I and I. And maybe now might be a good time, you know, we've set several of these keyframes right now, but if you notice, they're not showing up here in the timeline. That's because right now we are actually looking at in the video sequencer, or excuse me, right over here, in this editor type. We're basically using the editor type, which is laying out the video clips. We actually need a different type of view here to see these keyframes. So what I actually want to do is I still like having the view of all of the video clips and the transforms and all, like our timeline. We still like this video sequencer view. So I would just want to have Blender have another window in here that I can change the type of the view. So to add a window in Blender, it's kind of unintuitive, but you're going to bring your mouse over here to the top left of this particular window, and you see how the cursor changed to this plus? So over here it's a normal arrow, but as soon as you move over here to the top left, it becomes a plus. You're gonna get it to change to a plus, and now I'm gonna hold down my normal mouse click. So that is a left mouse click. So press and hold the mouse click, and now start pulling. And you see what this does? This sort of splits this, and now I've got two of these video sequencers. But in this top one, instead of seeing an exact copy of what I did, we're going to pull up what's called the dope sheet. So to do that, come over here to the editor type, drop this down, and what I want now is I want the dope sheet. So click on the dope sheet, and now what you see is if I zoom in, okay, over here, zoom, zoom, zoom. I'm using my mouse scroll wheel to zoom in, okay? And what you see is these little orange dots, these are the keyframes. So as we scrub back and forth, you can kind of see that as we move back and forth, you know, here's a keyframe, here's one of these other keyframes we added, and you can see how Blender decides to interpolate between these. So this is pretty neat, right? So let's add maybe one or two more just to see what it's going on. So how about right here? Let's add another keyframe. So again, I need to come back to my video editor. Again, this is a little bit cumbersome when you have all of these windows. Oh, here they are. Okay, so let's mess with these values. I'll move this down, and now watch when I press the I on, I'm going to hover over the position X, and I'm about to push I, and watch the dope sheet. We'll see a keyframe show up in the dope sheet. So I'm going to hover over this, I'm going to press I, and there you go. You see that we basically get these keyframes showing up, and you can basically see that right here, here's the image property that we're keyframing. We just specified the translation X. So I also want to do the translation Y, so if I press I when I'm hovering down here, I would expect another keyframe dot to show up right there. So if I do this, there you go. So this is pretty neat, and what's actually really cool about this is you can keyframe many different parameters. We were just keyframing the position X and the position Y. We could also keyframe, so for example, maybe I'm getting tired of trying to use this circle to highlight the aircraft. Let's just have the circle fade out. So I want it to basically disappear. So to do that, one way that we could do this is I can come up here to the opacity, and I can just now, instead of having this at 1, I would like to now gently keyframe and transition from a 1 to a 0. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to place the frame number where I want to start the keyframing, and now all I need to do is I need to just hover over a different parameter. So for example, this one right here, I'm going to hover over the opacity with my mouse, and I'm going to now push I. So again, watch the dope sheet and watch what this opacity looks like. So I press I, I, right? So I click on it, hit I, and you see how it turns yellow, right? So we've added now a keyframe, and if you look down here, you can see that now here's the keyframe on the blend opacity. So that's great. So if I now scroll forward, and you know, this is pretty good. Now I'd like this to be at 0, right? So it's faded out. So I'll change it to the value I want, hover over the guy, and then press the I key. And it changes, and we get a keyframe. So now let's take a look at this fully keyframed sequence. So I'll start back at the beginning, and we see the aircraft is going to be launched, and then soon we're going to see the green circle show up, and the green circle is going to hopefully move to track the vehicle. So there it goes, and now you can see, yep, it's smoothly transitioning between the keyframes. That's great, and pretty soon we're going to have it start fading out right here. There, it just faded out. So there you go. So this is really kind of neat. So keyframes are really powerful, and you can keyframe a lot of different parameters. You know, we just showed doing it for the X, Y, and the opacity, but you could also do things like the scale. You can make the thing shrink or grow. You know, for example, you know, I'll show you, let's import, how about another video just to show the robustness and the versatility of keyframing. Alright, so I've added this second clip. So this is actually a clip of a onboard camera from the aircraft as it was flying, and actually I guess we see that it's upside down. So tell you what, let me add a transform to this guy, and let's rotate that clip by 180 degrees just to get it in the proper orientation. So 180, there we go. Okay, so now it's in the right orientation. Okay, and now let's also shrink this so that it's not obscuring the entire view. And maybe let's start with it down here in the bottom corner, something like this. Okay, so now we've got sort of a picture-in-picture view of both what a bystander would see as well as what the aircraft would see. So what's kind of neat about this is we can also go ahead and keyframe a couple of these actions. So for example, let's go ahead and we'll start with it as a small picture-in-picture because it's fun to see the aircraft being thrown by the operators. But now let's go through, and again we'll go through our highlighting with the circle. But then once the circle fades out, you know what? You really can't see anything from the bystander viewpoint, right? This aircraft is so darn small. It might be nice now to bring this picture-in-picture to be a little bit larger. So let's do that. Let's come here, and I'm going to click on this second transform, right? So this transform is associated with the onboard camera clip. So let's go ahead and keyframe the position right here at this location. So I'll hover over the X, hit I, hover over the Y, hit I, and I also want to hover over the scale. I'm going to keyframe the scale right here. Okay, and now what I want to do is let's go ahead and advance forward, and what I would like to have happen is let's have the camera come and fill the screen. So at this location, a little bit further on, I want the scale to be up at 1, and I want the position to be at 0, 0. There we go. And okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit I. Hover over, hit I, hover over, and hit I. So now, if we look at this, this should hopefully look pretty darn cool. So again, we'll go and let it roll. And now the green circle is going to fade out of existence. And now the picture-in-picture should grow, there we go, until we see the entire vehicle. So keyframing is pretty darn neat, right? Let's in fact, it's so neat. Let's show you what one or two other options or examples of things you can keyframe. So I mean, we could add text. Here, let's add some text. How about? Okay, so I'm gonna stretch this out. Let's text and say, how about here in the text? Let's say, this is the view from the onboard camera. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's make a. Well, here, tell you what. Let's keyframe the size. Let's go ahead and press I on 40. And let's keyframe the color for giggles. How about let's start out with a red image or red text. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit I on all of these. So I'm click on that. Come on, come on. Sorry. Hold on. Sorry. I think what we need to do. Come on. Let me get the color. I. There we go. Okay, so I got the entire color red. And now let's go ahead and make this. Oh, sorry, shucks. I just noticed the text. It's on a channel that is lower than the video, so it's actually behind the video. So I actually need to move this. So I'm gonna press G to grab this text. I'm gonna move it straight up. There we go. So now we can see the text down here. Okay, and now let's go forward a little bit, and we'll make this a little bit bigger now. So let's make the text grow to that size. I'll press I, and let's make the color change to, I don't know, let's pick something random. I don't know, 0.5, 0.7, you know, pink. Okay, sure. Okay, so then I'm going to hover over the color, and then I'm going to press I, and there we go. So now it is, yeah, it hopefully it should grow. It should change color, all that kind of good stuff. So again, let's back this thing up. Okay, there we go. So there's the text. Yep, it's growing, and it's changing color at the same time. So awesome. You know what? Let's go ahead and let's do one more example of things you could keyframe. So we might want to add a soundtrack to this video, right? So let's go ahead and how about I'll come here and I'll say add sound. And I've already got a sound file here. It's a free audio file. And what we can do is, let's go ahead and display the waveform. Initially, when we're launching the aircraft, maybe let's have the soundtrack be very quiet so we can hear any chattering or talking between the participants. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and start the sound to be very quiet. So how about 0.1? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and keyframe the sound volume at the start of the video. So I'm going to press I while hovering over it. And now we're going to go ahead and launch the aircraft. You know, there's some chattering, there's some talking. Now the aircraft is flying away. And I think at this point it's probably safe to start bringing up the sound levels. Okay, so I'm going to hit another keyframe here at this location and keep it at 0.1. So now between the start of the clip and frame number 358, it's going to stay at a constant 1, but over several iterations, I want to bring that sound up to the full volume. So now, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and keyframe, and I'm going to hover over it and hit I. There we go. So now the music should hopefully start quiet so we can hear the talking, and once the people are done talking and the aircraft is away, we'll bring the soundtrack up so we can see it flying away. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty good set of examples of how keyframing works. Let's go ahead. I'll render this entire project that we've created so far, and let's take a look at what the rendered movie looks like.
Nice dip.
Got it. Alright, so that wasn't a cinematic masterpiece by any means, but hopefully you get the idea on how keyframes work. So, to summarize, keyframes were actually pretty darn simple in Blender. The first thing you needed to do was just open the dope sheet. That was one of the main new features that we looked at today. So to do that, it was a little bit unintuitive, but what you have to do is you have to first hover your mouse over the top left of the video sequencer, right? You're going to do that until the cursor turns into that plus symbol, and then you're going to click and drag the left mouse button to kind of split the video sequencer and create this new window. And then all you have to do is just change that editor type of that new window to the dope sheet. Once you've got the dope sheet set up and open, you're ready to see where the keyframes you add get placed. So all you need to do to actually add the keyframes we saw is you just need to first advance the project frame to the desired frame number. So really, you're setting the X value here in terms of the keyframe function. Then what you need to do is go ahead and hover over the image parameter you'd like to keyframe and press the I on the keyboard. And when you do that, that's effectively setting the Y value of that keyframe XY pair. And then all you need to do is just repeat steps 2 and 3 for as many frames and image parameters as you desire, and then Blender will go ahead and smoothly interpolate between the keyframes that you specified. So, with that being said, I think this is a great place to leave it, as this is just supposed to be an introductory tutorial on keyframes. We'll dive deeper into some of the details in a later video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. Surprisingly, if you just scroll down a little ways and click on that subscribe button, it really does help me continue making these videos. Also, please leave a comment and let me know if the video was helpful or if there are topics you'd like me to cover in the future. And I hope to catch you at one of these future videos. So until we talk again, I think I'll sign off for now. Bye.